Our next speaker this morning is Ryan O'Shaughnessy. Ryan is the Executive Director of the Rolling Plains Quail Research Foundation. Welcome to the stage, Ryan.
Thanks, Romy. Good morning. I love coming to these things because you always get to see a bunch of familiar faces. As you can tell, I have an accent, so if you don't understand me, I've got Natalie posted over there and Lalo in the back to interpret for me. Well, as Romy said, I'm the Executive Director of the Rolling Plains Quail Research Foundation, and as the name suggests, we are all things quail. That is pretty much the only thing that we focus on is quail with our research team. However, we do engage in partnerships. This was a great segue. We have other university groups coming out and studying bumblebees on the ranch for pollinators. We partner with the Dallas Zoo. They come out and they catch horny toads on the ranch and try to propagate those to release around the state. So while our primary focus is quail, we are open to collaboration and partnerships. We've had Audubon out there a few times. We host training sessions for the Texas Master Naturalists. So if anybody in the audience here is looking for partnerships and wants a 5,000-acre research ranch to do some cool work on, we are more than willing to engage. The Research Foundation itself was founded in 2007. It was hatched. It was an idea. There was a couple of quail hunters sitting on the back of a tailgate having a cigar and a bourbon, and these hunters, conservationists, were concerned about the quail decline that we've seen throughout the state of Texas. These four gentlemen said to themselves, you know what, we need an entity within the state that can focus on quail and try to restore these birds to our landscapes. And that was, like I said, back in 2007. Since then, I believe that we are the only entity, not just in Texas, but throughout the U.S., that solely focuses on quail. We have one of the largest and longest continuous data sets on bobwhite quail in the world to date. So that's something we're very, very excited about. But I'm not here just to talk about the foundation. I want to tell you guys a little bit about what we do and some of the projects that we engage on, and I'm going to focus in on one in particular. Everybody sitting out here is conservation-minded. Richard touched on a few things. When it comes to conservation with birds, in particular, there's two main factors that drive those populations. There's the weather, and there's habitat loss. I don't think I need to remind any of you all sitting out here that Texas is the fastest growing state by population in the US at the moment. More people are moving to this state every day than any other state in the nation. What does that mean? It means we need houses. It means we need to produce more food. That means we are losing habitat faster than we can restore it and faster than we can protect it. So I bring up weather and habitat because back in 2010, again, there was a group of quail hunters. They went out for a hunt, and we had great precipitation. We had great weather. The conditions were primed for there to be an explosion of birds. They were hunting on a beautiful ranch where the habitat is absolutely perfect for bobwhite. And guess what? No birds. So back in 2010, it was really the start of us beginning to think to ourselves, man, we've held on to these long-held beliefs of climate, weather, habitat, but we have noticed through time that there's been periods when we've had a combination of both of those, great habitat and great weather, but for whatever reason, we still haven't seen this response in the quail like we expected. So we started to think outside the box. We started looking for some other explanation to why these birds might not be responding when we think they should. So in 2011, we launched a four-year study, multi-million-dollar study called Operation Idiopathic Decline. And as scientists, we like giving fancy names to things. Basically, it meant we don't know what the hell's going on, so we're going to look at everything. And so that's what we did. For the next 4 years, we looked at everything. I mean, we looked at fungi, we looked at bacteria, we re-looked at habitat. And of all the different metrics that we studied over this 4-year period, there was one thing that really floated to the top, and this is specifically in the Rolling Plains ecoregion, and that was parasites. 2 in particular, eyeworm and a cecal worm. Cecum is the stomach of a quail. We estimate currently throughout the Rolling Plains, 93% of our quail have eyeworms, and about 85% of our quail are infested with cecal worms. If you guys are biologists, you're saying, yeah, so what, Ryan? I mean, we could go out and we could literally shoot a meadowlark, and that meadowlark will have worms. A deer's going to have worms. Most of our wildlife has parasites, right? On average, though, in the Rolling Plains, we are finding quail with an average of 14 eyeworms. To make that hit home for you guys, that would be if we scaled up the size of those worms and the quail, that would be like any one of us sitting out here having 14 toothpick-sized worms living in the orbits of our eyes. On average, we're finding over 290 cecal worms living in the cecum. We're not saying that these worms are killing these birds directly, but I can guarantee if I put 14 toothpick-sized eyeworms in any of y'all's eyes and tell you to cross the street, you're going to get hit by a bus. So this was just something that we were looking at. We know how to produce good habitat. We haven't figured out how to produce good weather yet, but we're working on that. But this was something else that we were able to look at and think, man, we know these worms are probably draining the energetics from these birds tremendously. Can we knock these worms out of these populations, make these birds healthier, increase their annual survival, and that could potentially offset the bad dry years in climate and maybe subpar habitat. And so that's what we're working on. I'd love to say that we did it all by ourselves, but we had some fantastic partners, Texas Tech University, and in particular Dr. Ron Kendall. And it was a 10-year process initiated in 2015, developing a medicated feed for wild quail. Last year in June, the FDA finally gave us approval on that. This is the first time in the US's history that a medicated feed has been approved for use in wildlife out on the landscape. The big question we have, we know that this medicated feed works in a laboratory. Can we apply it on a grand enough scale out in the wild and have enough birds come in and eat enough of that food to make a difference in the population? So beginning this year, the Rolling Plains Quail Research Foundation, we've initiated a big landscape-wide study. We're covering about 70,000 acres with special feeders and applying this medicated feed. It only gets applied twice a year, in the spring and in the fall, to try to give these birds the best chance before breeding season and then right before winter too. So hopefully I'll be back here in about 4 or 5 years to give you guys good results and say, hey, you know, we turned around the quail decline, so watch this space. I think I have about a minute here for any questions. Thank you. Usually if there's no questions, it means that my presentation was either really bad or really good. So there's no middle ground. Oh no, we got one.
Decline in the quail population correlated with the decline in the pollinator population, because we're seeing a 40% drop in pollinator counts, bees, birds, you know, pollen, butterflies, all of those, right? So wasps, etc.
Absolutely. A lot of those pollinator plants that the bees are so reliant on in pollinating are great forbs for brooding cover, roosting cover for your quail. So as we start to lose all of those, yep, we're going to see an appreciable decline in the birds too, in the quail
So we
too.
correlate all that to obviously clearly pollution, but especially overuse of pesticides.
Absolutely, and we're based in the rolling plains. We've got nothing but agriculture around us. We're a 5,000-acre island smack bang in the middle of cotton and corn. All right, thank you.